Welcome to Let's Talk Healthy Living. I'm Marlene, your host. It's back to school season. That means back to routine, including meal prep, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks in between. Just thinking about it can be stressful. Remember Mia El-Eid, the registered dietitian from Montreal? Well, she's back to give us some meal prep tips. Let's listen in. Mia, thank you so much for chatting with us again, and welcome to Let's Talk Healthy Living again, and welcome all of you to Let's Talk Healthy Living. Good to have you back.
It's so nice to be back, and I'm so excited to talk to you again. It's been a few months, but I saw like all of the comments about the past YouTube video, and I'm super excited for this one today. I think it's a very important topic.
Yeah, exactly. And just to mention, when we posted the one that we did a couple months ago, a lot of people actually came up to me and said, Marlene, you got to keep talking about nutrition. It's such an important topic. So I'm really glad to have you back. And we also had another nutritionist here in Ottawa, Susan Alsenbach, who
Yeah.
came and chatted with us as well. We had a nice chat there. So thanks for coming back and talking to us about something that probably some people probably don't want to talk about right now, right? The back to school. We're heading into the back to school period within the next couple of weeks. And when I say back to school, I'm sure I could probably hear the groans from not only students but also parents. Because after the summer, you're having fun and it's time to get back into routine. So I thought, this is a great time to talk about nutrition and back to school. Because as parents get back into the routine, they're thinking about, oh my gosh, I gotta make breakfast, I gotta do lunch, and then I gotta come home and do dinner. So I just wanted to chat with you about that. But before we dive in, can you reintroduce yourself to our viewers?
Yes, of course. So for anyone who didn't watch the previous video, I'm gonna kind of do a quicker summary of basically my approach and where I work. So I'm a registered dietitian. My name is Mia, and I practice at Sööma. That's the name of the clinic, which is a multidisciplinary practice that is specialized in the treatment of eating disorders and sports nutrition. So I really decided to specialize in this field very early on in my career because I really believe that food is something that shouldn't create a lot of stress in people's lives because it is something that's super omnipresent. We eat multiple times a day. If it's something that causes stress, then it's like it can be very quickly overwhelming. So my goal and my approach with a lot of people is really based on this belief that food should not be stressful and it should be pleasurable also. And kind of base ourselves on the fact that having a good relationship with food will automatically create good eating habits in the long term. So this is kind of my approach. If ever you want to know more about it, feel free to look at our previous video where I present with a lot more detail my approach and what I do for a living.
And you're so right. And in developing those good eating habits, we need to start early, right? And that's why we love having you coming on and talking about that and emphasizing that to our viewers. And thinking about back to school and nutrition, how can we help to get rid of the stress, among parents and even among students as they think about, what do I make for lunch, what do I make for dinner, and all of that. So how can we simplify this for parents and ensure that children are getting the right nutrition, the carbs, the protein, and all of that in their diet?
Yeah, I think that's a very great question. And kind of going back to what you said before, the transition between summer where we mostly don't have much of a routine, it can be super difficult to like go back into this school routine. Now the kids have activities after school, they have to wake up early. Maybe they have homework also after school. So it can be very difficult to kind of juggle your personal lives as parents, plus having all of these extra responsibilities for your kids. So as you said, I think it's super important that food is not something that creates more stress on top of everything else that changes already. So, basically, I think the first thing that I would say about this is creating a schedule, and the goal is really to prioritize consistency over perfection. So I think that's like the main goal with all of this. So my first recommendation would really be to have a clear schedule of what the routine will basically look like once we do get into the school year. So kind of take into consideration like, okay, kids' activities, my own work, what time do we have to wake up? So that way, if we have a clear eating schedule, breakfast is at that time. And then with school, the good thing is that they have a few snacks and meals there. But then after that, they come back home and then we have a few snacks and one meal, usually two. So I think that just having this clear example of this structure can help parents a lot because it'll reduce the stress around, okay, like what time will I eat today? What time do the kids have to have a snack? And it'll also reduce the stress because kids won't come and ask for food because, oh, I'm hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry. Oh, but like I'm not done with finishing dinner. So it just creates this calmness because everyone knows what to expect kind of around meal times and the structure. So that I think would be the first recommendation I would have. The second recommendation would really be to have building blocks to create every meal. So that being said, we kind of want to look at meals as, okay, what do I need in a meal? Not as, how can I make this pretty? Because I feel like now, especially with everything we see on TikTok, Instagram, social media, we see a lot of videos where it's like, come pack my kids' lunch boxes with me. And it's like all these intricate things with like lobster and flower-shaped pancakes. So it really, the goal here is really to just reduce this pressure on parents and just make sure that you're giving your kids what they need without this extra pressure. So what do we do basically? Four things that we want to have in one meal. So carbs for the energy and for the concentration, proteins for satiety um, and for muscle building, fruits and vegetables for hydration, minerals, vitamins, and satiety, and then fats for overall health, organ insulation, and just hormonal health also. So these four things are really like the building blocks of every meal. The goal of this is not to tell you you have to have all of these building blocks in every meal, otherwise you fail. It's mostly just to see it as a tendency because we know that if kids have these, we know that they'll feel good, satiated. The last thing is to prepare ingredients and not meals. That way we'll have like different options of things to kind of combine throughout the week. Um, it'll give more flexibility, but also it won't put pressure on like having the same meal over and over again. Um, so yeah, I think these would be the my main recommendation and key points for this.
No, these are great, Mia. And because so you say structure, ensuring that they have the building blocks for every meal and preparing ingredients and not meals. So can you give examples of what that means? Because parents probably think, you know what does this really mean when I'm just to sit down and prepare something? So what does
Yeah,
that actually look like? And something that does not cause, for example, what they call as taste fatigue where people just get
yeah.
tired of eating the same thing all the time.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think that all of this comes down to variety. So, how can we ensure variety in a way that isn't out of reach? So, if we look more at breakfast, it's kind of taking into account the scheduling thing too. So let's say there's a morning where I know that I won't have time to sit my kids down and actually have a meal all together. Maybe I'll go more towards something that's easy, like a smoothie, like a breakfast smoothie, a balanced smoothie, or a frozen waffle that I heated up quickly in my toaster, plus chocolate milk and a banana. So it can be all of these if I have time to sit down. However, maybe I have time to make my kids eggs in the morning with toast and avocados and I don't know, a fruit. Um, Otherwise, it can be maybe a yogurt bowl with granola and fruits, or it can be overnight oats. So it can really be anything. But we see how like we took into consideration like, okay, I want a breakfast. Where is my protein? It can be the yogurt, it can be eggs. What is my carb? It can be the oats, it can be the granola, it can be bread. Um, what is my fruits and vegetables, and then what is my fat? So these are kind of breakfast ideas. For lunch, I would say um, like easy things to put in kids' lunchbox. I'm usually thinking about like anything that's sandwiches. So a turkey sandwich with cheese and cucumber, or um, a bean and cheese quesadilla with I don't know, tomatoes, or a bagel with smoked salmon and cream cheese and tomatoes, or even leftovers. I think this is something that parents don't usually think about, but because you already have them, that will also like really facilitate preparing the meals, and you won't have to prepare so many things. And it'll just be easier for you as parents.
And because see, you say leftovers because I know when I was a kid, sometimes we would I would take leftovers, but sometimes I'm assuming that actually that was a long time ago. And back then, I don't even think that they even had microwaves at school. But
Yeah.
so I think that's the issue with leftovers, right? Because you likely would have to warm it, and given that kids all they want to do, especially the little kids, all they want to do is play. You know, eating's probably the definitely not on their minds anyways. So for certainly they probably won't want to warm things. Maybe the older kids, maybe university time, they probably will want to have leftovers.
Yeah.
But the younger ones, but I like your ideas about just a nice sandwich, and you don't have to put that in a cooler. Well, now they do have those little things that you can include that keeps your food cool, right?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. It can be like Tupperwares with something that keeps it cool, or maybe like an ice pack in the lunchbox can help a lot.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
think that makes a lot of sense, like what you just said about younger kids maybe not wanting or like to prioritize like putting your lunch in the microwave and then waiting for it. Obviously, they want to play. So I think that depending on the situation, also, it's like 100% something to take into consideration. If I give my kid leftovers for school and then it just always leftovers that are like cold, and it just always comes back after never eaten. The important thing is like to troubleshoot, kind of see like, okay, why? And then just like see what we can give that maybe might seem more accessible for them.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And talking about coming back with things that's never eaten, I hear about that all the time.
Yeah.
Where the parents they pack what they think is a beautiful lunch, and then the next thing they come back in the evening, it's like there's nothing, everything is almost there. So how can we prevent that? And essentially what I referred to before is the as that, I don't even know if that's a taste fatigue or, how can we encourage kids to want to eat their lunches that parents take the time to pack, every morning or every evening.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's such a valid question because it can be super, super hard, like taking time to prepare your kids' foods and then it just coming back every day and uneaten. So let's say if we look at it more generally, if a child were to come back home with the food uneaten only a few times, like it's not something that's super, super recurrent, it happens a few times, then I think that one of the first things that I've seen with a few of my child clients is that they tend to not know what is in their lunchbox before going to school. So I think one of my first things would be just to remove this element of surprise. So like, oh, kids, like by the way, now we're like driving to school. This is what I packed you in your lunch. And these are the snacks that I packed you. So that way they know exactly what to expect. They're not caught with, oh, I'm opening my lunchbox. I really don't like what I'm seeing here. And maybe it could just like remove this element of surprise. Another thing that can really help is involving the children in the choosing of the foods. When I say choosing, it doesn't necessarily mean, okay, what do you want to eat today? Because then I think it comes back to, well, giving them a lot of power in this decision making, whereas you want to keep this boundary for parents, like I'm the one who decides what you're gonna eat. And little parentheses, here, what I'm talking about is the Ellen Satter division of responsibilities. So what she basically says is that the parents have roles around meal times and the children have roles around meal times. So the parents' roles are what the kids are going to eat, where they're going to eat, and when they're going to eat. The kids' role is deciding whether they're going to eat and how much they're going to eat. So this is something that's super important to take into consideration. So when I say that we're gonna give them a little choice to for what they want to eat, what I mean is maybe like, okay, today I know that I have to pack him a snack anyways. So I can maybe give him two options. Okay, do you want this fruit or this fruit? Do you want an apple or a pear? Do you want a bear paw or do you want a muffin? You know, like things in the same category, but you're still giving them the illusion that like they're making the choice so that as we going back to the decision to the taste fatigue, it can just like um vary more like what they're already eating and it'll be changing every day. So involving them can be super good. Involving them can also look like okay, we're making pancakes together on the weekend and then this can act like as a meal prep and so during the week we're gonna have like these reheated pancakes for breakfast. And then the last thing is packing fun foods sometimes. So I kind of mentioned the bear paws and the muffins. Something that we see a lot is when, as parents, I think that people usually tend to want their kids to eat healthy. And so they try so hard to like put fruits, put vegetables, reduce all of these fun foods, so M&Ms, Skittles, muffins, bear paws. But then what we actually see is that this kind of creates a subconscious thing as, okay, I'm restricted of this, especially if they see that their friends are having bear paws or muffins or chips or whatever. And so this is kind of where it comes from. Like you're allowed to eat them. That's why we're gonna vary them. We're gonna give you the option to have them a few times a week, but we're also gonna add fruits another time or cheese and crackers another time. But at least that way it'll give the illusion that all foods are at the same level. It'll reduce also the risk of them having a more difficult relationship with food in the future. So this is where this comes from. So that's kind of like the general thing. Otherwise, obviously, if kids come back home like for months or for a few weeks without having eaten their food, then it's like super important to really troubleshoot, like, okay, what is happening here? And kind of approach it with curiosity rather than um, like frustration. So, hey, like I noticed that you're coming back home without eating your food a few times. Like, what is happening? Um, and then maybe it's like a playing problem, like I want to play more, or it's maybe an eating time problem. Something I actually realized is that a lot of schools don't have enough time to eat. So for slow eaters, it can be super difficult to actually finish their food. Um, so then it can be like really accommodations with the school that could help. Um, and just looking that way. And then also taking into consideration like other things. Is there a fear of eating in public with my classmates? Is there difficulty with textures, with noise, with overstimulation, like all of these things. So that's why I think at the end of all of this, having a look at the overall growth, so basically the growth curves, and making sure that your child is growing and staying on their curve and not losing weight. This is the most important thing. And this is kind of what can tell you, okay, you need more professional help or this is okay like that. But that's why just keeping an eye on this can be super helpful.
You've said so many really important things there, Mia. I don't even know where to. I'm busy taking notes while you're talking.
I feel like I'm
I,
answering a million questions at the
no,
same
no, no,
time.
but you're saying there's so many important things that you said there because you're right. I think it's really important to get kids involved because, I guess I find where if involved, I know, if I was a kid and I'm involved in making my meal, then I'm excited to go to school and eat it. And show people, this
Yeah.
impressive thing that I made last night with my parents or, my parent. So just getting kids involved, making them feel that sense of ownership is really important. You're so right. And another thing that you mentioned is I didn't think about the slow eaters because I know sometimes well, I'm a slow eater, as
Yeah.
well. And maybe that creates a bit of anxiety, right? Because they're thinking everybody's going to finish before them. So they probably don't even want to eat because they're
Yeah.
going to take too long to eat, right? So they'll just leave it. And
Mm-hmm.
then that fear of eating in public, that's true, because those are things that in terms of your expertise, those are things that you probably look at, yeah, as well. But even that fear of eating in public, maybe we're giving them those leftovers and you're putting it in a microwave, and maybe some of those cultural foods, maybe they have that stronger odor, right? And maybe they're a little bit embarrassed about that. So you're right, talking to kids and getting a sense of how they're feeling and why they're bringing their lunches back is so important.
Yeah, exactly. And what you just mentioned also about the cultural foods, I think that's the most difficult thing also for immigrants, like if I take my cultural food to school and it's gonna risk like bullying or, negative comments, then there is unfortunately a lot more tendency to just not eat this food at all. So I think that down the line, it's kind of seeing what we can do to overcome this because unfortunately what I see a lot is that once these cultural foods are put on the side, then it's really like a part of your identity that's being put on the side too. And yeah, this is actually something that is very present, especially for immigrants. So I think that's super interesting that you mentioned that.
Yeah, and definitely, and maybe this is something that the parents need to help the schools to develop that sensitivity
Yeah,
around that.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
completely. And so you talked about some of the things that parents can provide to their children in terms of actual meals, like smoothies. And I guess when I think of smoothies, I never thought of smoothies associating smoothies with kids, but I guess you can because I always hear older, people saying, "Oh, I had a smoothie for breakfast," but I've never heard someone saying, "I gave my kid a smoothie for breakfast." But you can because you can pack all those great nutrients in a smoothie.
Exactly. In such an easy way too.
Yeah, exactly. And when you talk about, for example, frozen waffles, because I think in my mind, when I hear frozen waffles, I think, remember those, you probably don't remember, but those sweet waffles, I may still have them. Those sweet frozen waffles that you get it from the grocery store, but you can actually make your own waffles, right? A kind of a healthier version.
I think linked to how much time the parents have on their hands. So I think that, if you're able to make your own waffles, you put whatever you want in there and it's maybe more catering also to your taste, your child's taste too. I can maybe put some fruits in there so that way it wouldn't have to be like an extra portion of fruits. So in these situations, I think that would be super, super helpful. And also in other situations, I think that maybe the frozen waffles that are bought from the grocery store can act as a backup, like a plan B, in case I don't have time to make the waffles, or in case I need something that's super, super quick right now, like all of these things. So it's like kind of here in the freezer for a plan B. And then I also have the option or the choice to make homemade waffles also that I could freeze myself and do it. So I think it actually depends on the reality of the family, but both options are great.
Completely. And you're right, because I think some parents don't necessarily think of maybe taking maybe a weekend, even though probably the weekends are crazy busy. Kids are so busy
Yeah.
these days. But maybe
Uh-huh.
taking some time over the weekend, maybe even with the kids and prepping stuff and putting them in the freezer. And sometimes it
Yeah,
can last for a whole week, right? In the freezer. And can you just pull them as you need them? So it
exactly.
aligns with that structure that you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. It can even last like 3 months in the freezer.
Yeah,
So I
exactly.
think that it can be something that's super interesting to try, as you said, especially when there are families with kids that have a lot of different activities on the weekend and don't necessarily have other time to like meal prep. I think that's such a good idea, actually.
Hmm. And you talked about breakfast, some of the ideas that they can do for breakfast and maybe for lunch. But what about, you come home from work or a parent comes home from work, kids are, all of got to do your homework and this and that and everything. So what are some of the suggestions that you can provide parents for dinner? Because I think that's also a challenge, right? And making it interesting as well.
Yeah, exactly. I think this really depends also. Well, I think it could have different solutions. So, one of the solutions, as we said before, is like meal prepping. So, meal prepping is also something that we hear about a lot. It does not have to be perfect. I can prepare like batch cook, sweet potato, mushrooms, and chicken, tofu. And that way I know that it's there. So maybe on the nights where I'm not cooking or I just prefer to have something that I already meal prepped, I'm just gonna put all of that together and then serve it like that. Another thing also can be easier meals like chili served over rice so that you have black beans or whatever other beans that you want. You have tomatoes, bell peppers, whatever you want to put in there too. And then you have your base of rice or anything else also. Or it can be also wraps like fajitas, let's say. So you make, let's say, actually an easy thing that a lot of my clients have loved is buying the rotisserie chicken. And you have this already prepped, your protein is prepped. You take your protein, you take a fajita also. You take your fajita, you put the rotisserie chicken, you cut a few bell peppers, you put it inside, you wrap it, and then you just put it in the oven for 10, 15 minutes, I guess, depending on your oven. And then you serve it with guacamole, and that I think is one of the easiest meals that you can have. So it's kind of looking at it that way, like how can I make my life easier, especially in these moments where I didn't meal prep, I don't have anything in my fridge. What can I serve right now? Also, one of the easiest things, pasta. You can serve it with anything. Cut up a cucumber and open a can of tuna. You have a tuna pasta salad. So it really does not have to be perfect or beautiful. The most important thing is that just that your kids have what they need. It's something that's quick. It'll do for the night, and then you'll just do whatever else you want the other days.
Exactly. And I think parents need to realize it doesn't have to be complicated. And simplicity can be tasty as well. And another
Exactly.
thing that you kind of alluded to is that you can use things in multiple ways, right? You've got a rotisserie chicken, maybe you can use the rest of it to make a sandwich, a chicken sandwich,
Exactly.
and even your chili that you mentioned. You can use that, in different ways, the leftovers in different ways, the second day. It's just a matter of being a little bit creative and what you talked about, that structure as well, and having kind of a little bit of a of a meal plan. But just to go back to the structure, you talked about structure. So what would they do? Is there like an app that they would do? Let's say Monday's this, Tuesday's this, or something like that. What would
Hmm.
that structure kind of look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that it really depends also on the family and the family reality. Um, so we can talk about two different structures. So one of the structures was really like a schedule throughout the day of like when am I having the meals, when am I having the snacks. That way it helps the kids and the parents kind of visualize, okay, where's my free time? Where can I do other stuff? Where do I cook? All of that. And then we have the other structure that's mostly linked to the meals and like the meal preparation. So let's say there isn't like a specific app that I use, but I think kind of just planning the week with what you have in the fridge, with what you have in the pantry, seeing what you already have, and then also kind of checking online for different recipes. There are a lot of recipes online, so it's kind of seeing like what you like, what your family likes, the family staples also, and just building this repertoire so that you're able to kind of choose the meals that you like. A lot of families do like to have the schedule of Monday I'm going to do that, Tuesday I'm going to do that, whatever, etc. And also reusing, let's say I made chicken with potatoes and asparagus for dinner one day. So the day after, I'm gonna reuse the chicken and I'm gonna make a fajita wrap to school. So it's kind of like, as you said, reusing what you already have for dinner, for lunch, or for different lunches. Um, And again, depending on the reality, like, do I want to include a meal that I do on the day of in my little structure or not? Or how many meals do I want to vary during the week? Some people like different meals every day, which can be more time consuming. Some people are okay with having one or two different meals during the week. So it kind of like depends on the reality.
Let's move it a little bit older children. Let's say,
Yeah.
well, maybe they're not children. They're some of them are like a young, young adults, like university age
Yeah.
children who may be living on their own. They're just crazy busy studying, thinking about exams, running from one class to the other, and some of them may even have some budget constraints. How can we help those young people to eat nutritiously?
Yeah, I think that's a great question too, because especially if we focus more on the university students, I think a lot of students in that university age, like there are a lot of responsibilities, especially if they live alone. I think that it could vary a lot, like their food tasks and stuff, like whether they live alone or they live at home. So I think that because students usually tend to have a lot of things, bigger social life, a lot of homework, a lot of exams, like I think that in general, food is just not the priority in this period of life. So I think again, consistency over perfection is the most important thing. So it kind of goes back to what we talked about before. So really focusing on the easy meals and also meal prepping. And also like having staples at home. So let's say what are my staples in terms of the building blocks that we had talked about before. So can I have a few cans of tuna in my room at home, whatever? Can I have a few pre-boiled eggs? Can I have frozen vegetables, frozen fruits? Can I have little snacks that don't spoil quickly, like all of these stuff. And I think that way we already have our building blocks and it's kind of seeing like, okay, how am I gonna structure my week? Because the reality is that, especially when you're in like a more exam period, your priority is really not like, okay, how can I make my meal like super cute so that whatever I'm like content with it. But I think that the goal here is really just to make sure that you're eating enough. Um, so meal prepping also can be something that is super good, and that does help a lot of people, depending on the reality again. So what are the appliances that I have? What are the appliances that I can afford buying if I don't already have them? Like all of these things. And then just like planning, okay, how can I put a few things together so that it makes a meal for myself? Plus, also, this is like kind of talking about the how can I make sure that my meals are balanced? I'm also giving myself all the nutrients that I need, but also I would like to mention that having also sometimes ramen for lunch and um, microwavable rice for lunch with other stuff, that's completely okay. And again, the goal here is to eat. Like if it were to eat like foods that are maybe more like ultra processed, that's okay. That's so much better than not eating. So even sometimes having microwavable rice with a can of tuna and a cucumber, that's a meal. So it's kind of seeing how can I give my body what it needs, but also taking into consideration accessibility. Or like as I said, ramen noodles with two boiled eggs that I already pre-boiled and I don't know, a fist of spinach. Like it can be anything. So it's kind of taking into consideration like every single food can have a place in your eating and also taking into consideration the fact that in university you also have more of a social life. You might be going out more to restaurants and that's completely okay. So it's really just zooming out and seeing, okay, what does my food or like eating habits look like in general? How can I improve them to make sure that I'm not lacking any vitamins, I'm not lacking any protein, I'm not lacking any carbs or fats. Before I move on to like kind of the budget friendly things, I'm curious what you think about this.
Well, I do agree because I think most people when they think of there's a stigma that's associated with processed
Yeah,
food, right? But I like your idea of kind of combining that, ramen noodles with eggs. So you're getting your protein and you're getting your carbs, maybe not the best carbs, but it's still a balanced meal and throw in some spinach in there. So, and that creates a balanced meal on a budget, right? And so it's just a different creative way of thinking about meal preparation at various stages in life. So
exactly.
I completely love that.
And it also, I think, reduces a lot of pressure for university students, like again, going back to how food can be something that's super overwhelming and intimidating, like very, very quickly. How can I just reduce this pressure, especially in a period of life that is super overwhelming? University is very intense. So how can I just make sure that I'm eating enough and kind of like looking at food less from a like creative or like artsy perspective and mostly just like how can I just eat what I need without like thinking about it too much? And bottom line with all of this is that the body doesn't know like what it's receiving, like what food the carb is coming from or what food the protein is coming from. All it knows is that okay, it's getting the food that it needs. Again, variety, balance, super, super important. So like if I eat only ramen every single day, every week, then you're probably going to have nutritional deficiencies. The same way as if you ate a salad like only with vegetables every day for a few weeks, it'll also like create nutrition deficiencies. So it's really like the overall picture that we just want to improve.
And I think I was listening to a program the other day and they were talking about canned fish. Because most people when they thought of canned fish like eat canned fish, but it's so healthy. And it's a budget friendly way of getting protein as well. And they
Hmm.
were talking about a lot of athletes who are eating meat, tuna, and even like mackerel and all of that, which is just a really great way of doing it. And like you said, having things like that in your pantry and having eggs as well in your fridge. Maybe you come home from school and you don't have time to cook, do maybe two boiled eggs and you're good to go. Then you're getting your protein. You can do a shake, a smoothie or something like that, as well. So completely agree with you. I agree with
Yeah.
you.
Exactly. And kind of like continuing on the budget friendly point, like as you said, it's like canned mackerel or like tuna, especially white tuna, all of these things are a source of omega-3 too. And it's that, and you can also have salmon, but also salmon can be something that is a lot more expensive, especially when you buy it like fresh. So, this is like a budget-friendly way of having your omega-3s, your fats, super good. And it's also tasty, like you can do whatever you want with it. So that's one of the things that can help a lot with the budget. Another thing is planning meals ahead. So we already kind of talked about this, like the meal prepping, but also more specifically, like kind of looking, what do I have in my pantry? What do I have in the fridge? That way we reduce food waste. When we reduce food waste, we're saving money. So it's kind of looking at it from that perspective. How can I plan my meals ahead also in a way that makes sense? A good structure that I like with this is, again, looking at your pantry, looking at your fridge, seeing what you already have, thinking of recipes that are already in your repertoire, or going online to check recipes that interest you, seeing what you can use that you already have, plus completing it with other stuff that you might need. And at the same time, flyers. I don't know if this is something that you have already used, but there are a lot of different apps that have like all of these flyers. You put your postal code, it puts all of the flyers for that week. or just going on the websites of grocery stores and seeing like, okay, what do I have that is less expensive this week, that is more affordable? And so that way I'm really saving money and I'm taking into consideration what I already have, reduction of food waste, plus I'm um, kind of profiting from that situation of having all of these things for a reduced rate. Another thing that is super cool is Too Good to Go. That also is super, super interesting because it's a few restaurants and I think sometimes grocery stores that kind of give food for lower price. Food that is still good, but let's say if I think about bakeries tend to have like freshly made products from that day. So all the baked goods that stay at the end of the day will go to the trash, unfortunately, or to the employees. But that's why they just sell them at a lower price at the end of the day, so that they're still going to get used. Plus, you're making you're you're getting it for a lower price. So this thing I think is super, super interesting. It's also for grocery stores, other restaurants. And the other one is something that's called Odd Bunch that I actually learned about a few months ago. It's not sponsored, by the way. It's a food app where they kind of sell the fruits and vegetables that aren't pretty enough to go to the grocery store. So they're still super good. They're not moldy or anything, but they're just like shaped differently or shaped weirdly. So it also goes for a lower price. So that also I think is super interesting. Or another thing for fruits and vegetables are like any baskets of different variety of fruits or vegetables like you can buy and it's super good. I think that's mostly like for families because it does come in a huge quantity, but for university students, I think just sticking to these flyers and Too Good to Go, plus planning ahead meals, plus looking at your fridge and pantry is a huge, huge change.
And the flyers, because people have been using flyers for a long time, but now you've got
Yeah.
apps to make them
Yeah.
even more accessible, right?
Exactly. There are two that I know of. I'm sure there are more. There is Flip, Flipp, and there's Reebee also. They work a bit differently, but the concept is the same. You put your postal code and it puts all of the different flyers for that week, and you can just look through them, see what grocery store you prefer, what grocery store is closer to your house, and then just seeing like what is less expensive and where.
Yeah, and this is something that is great for students, but anybody can actually use those as well.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
But
Exactly.
this is great. Thanks, Mia.
Yeah.
And so just to conclude, what are let's say the top three advice that you would provide to parents, students, and to our viewers as they think of preparing for this back to school season?
Yeah. I think, well, I said this multiple times, but consistency over perfection is like my number one, I think, because it's basically looking at the fact that not every meal has to be Pinterest worthy. Not every meal has to be pretty or taking a lot of time. It's really just the tendency and overall eating habits that are the most important. So there's one meal I really did not have time to cook. I opened a can of tomato sauce and boiled some pasta. This is the meal. It is what it is. You know, you're gonna be hungry maybe a few hours later, but it's okay because you can have a snack. Um, so this is really the first one. And then the other one is planning ahead while considering your schedule. So especially for as we said before, like families who have very, very busy schedules, how can we make sure that eating is not stressful and isn't taking a lot of time? When am I going to do my grocery shopping? What am I going to have on these days? How many times am I going to have these meals? Etc. Same thing for breakfast. This tends to really reduce like all of this stress around meal times. Plus, you'll feel less like you're constantly cooking or preparing meals. So I think that's why it's super important. Plus, also we kind of talked about it, like the structure for kids and parents. So that's like the second point in general. And then the last thing would be keeping food enjoyable and free of stress, obviously, because it's really something that I see a lot is that whenever food is free, stress-free, and whenever there's less pressure over it, it tends to be so much easier to maintain these habits long term. When we put too much pressure on ourselves, when we're like, oh, but this meal didn't have any protein, like, oh, like, why am I even doing this? And just like really talking down on yourself, we really tend to move on to less good habits longer, and we less take ourselves into consideration. So it's kind of seeing this with a compassionate lens, like I'm gonna eat what I can eat. The important thing is that I eat, so I'm gonna do that. And also keeping it enjoyable in the sense that um, I can go out for restaurants. I can order Uber Eats if ever it's like I just don't feel like cooking or I'm in an exam period. Again, the important thing is just to eat and not like deprive yourself of anything and just looking at your meals in general.
So important advice. Yeah, thank you so much. So
Mhm.
keep it simple, plan ahead, and just enjoy your food. I don't stress out about it.
Exactly. Yeah,
And this,
like at first it's super normal that it might be stressful, but it's really the long term that this is, I think, the best thing that has helped a lot of people.
yeah, exactly. And these are things that you can practice over the long term. But thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'm sure our viewers enjoyed that as well. I certainly did. Thank you. Thank you, Mia.
Of course, it was such a pleasure being here
Yes.
again, and it was so much fun to talk about this. And I can't wait to see what viewers think about this.
Yes, I'm sure they'll enjoy it as much as I did. And I'd love to have you back again.
I would love to. I can't wait for our next discussion, but
Yeah.
I would love to see also what people want to hear, and I can't wait for the next one.
Yes, you've all heard that. So tell Mia what you want to hear.
Yes, please.
Yes. All right. So we'll see you again. Thank you.
Bye.
Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Thanks for tuning in.